4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm live. I'm Dan Salem, live on BuzzChomp on YouTube, here to talk the NFL and sports, specifically this week, fantasy football. But first, let me go live on Facebook so they can join the conversation. And live, 3, 2, 1. All right, hello. I'm Dan Salem. Now I'm live on Facebook at the Dan Salem, Facebook mentions, and on YouTube, BuzzChomp channel. I'm going to tweet this out at the Dan Salem on Twitter. We're talking fantasy football today, live. It's going to get a little personal because we're talking top players, Antonio Brown or Ezekiel Elliott. Potentially, I got them both. This is a keeper league, so let's discuss. But first, the Twitter. I'm going to retweet on BuzzChomp at BuzzChomp with an extra Z. Let's do this. Oh. Tweeting it out. And I'm going to hit the retweet button to share it. So share away. Thank you. And then we'll dive into some fantasy talk. Because the top wide receiver is obviously Antonio Brown. But who's the top player? Because it really depends on how you value players in fantasy football, right? Any avid fantasy player will tell you there are a lot of really good wide receivers out there. The running back position, however, is not so deep. But you have to start just as many wide receivers as running backs. You get a flex spot. In our league, we can play with a quarterback. But you got 3 and 3. So you need really good with both positions, and running back's tougher to come by. Now, I drafted Ezekiel Elliott last year. This is an auction league. It's a keeper league. So I got him at $49, and so I can keep him at $49. That's well below his going price. I also snatched up Antonio Brown off the waiver wire because he was going to go for market value and someone dumped him. So I can keep Antonio Brown for $55. Now, I was debating, can I really keep the top running back and wide receiver? Now, I think Zeke's the top running back because this is a keeper league and he's only in his second year. So long-term strength, Cowboys are getting better. Now, I understand there's other running backs in the discussion. He's probably second or third on most lists. But because of his youth and because, he had one rookie season and I feel like he's going to go up and the Cowboys are going up, I think he's higher value. So I have the best running back. Now, Antonio Brown is definitely the best wide receiver. Even with a little bit banged up Big Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown still gets his. He's been so consistent, 4 straight years, topping out his categories, and he's been the top wide receiver. I got to say, in fantasy, it's risk versus reward, correct? The value of having the top player at the position and being able to lock them in each week on your roster is huge. Then you can swap out in the other 2 running back wide receiver spots and not worry so much because you know you got a bona fide stud starting. That was great with Ezekiel Elliott last year. I have not had that at wide receiver. I've found great wide receivers. I have 2 other excellent options to keep, one being Devontae Adams, the other being Sterling Shepard. And we'll talk about those in a second because this is a tough decision. And I feel like my roster heading into the season with keepers is particularly exciting because I also have Matt Ryan to choose from. I grabbed him before last year, actually kept him, and he had a great year last year. But deeper dive in his stats, which we'll do in a minute, makes him questionable to keep, especially at the price. I also have Travis Kelce, tight end, number 2 tight end, number 3 tight end on some lists. He's behind Gronkowski. There's, I believe it, Jordan Reed, but I really like Kelce. He's a solid 10 to 15 points a week. That's money at the tight end, and I got him at a good value price, $11. As a keeper, that's nothing, playing with a $200 budget. So, what's the value of the top wide receiver? Now, if you can get 2 and 3 level wide receivers, Antonio Brown, while amazing, yes, if you're doing a snake draft, you grab him. Don't kid yourself. But we're auctioning. How much do you pay for him? If I drop him back in the pool, Antonio Brown is going to go for like $60, $65 in our auction league. Is that a value for him? Because you could get 2 studs for that same price. One of them being Devontae Adams, who I also have on my team for $1. So you get where I'm getting at. How do you pick your wide receivers? Thankfully, because I can keep Antonio Brown at the market value, I'm going to do so. You don't let him go. The value of Antonio Brown on your team is enormous. However, this is a debate, right? Antonio Brown versus Ezekiel Elliott. It's really the value of a wide receiver versus the value of a running back. Ezekiel Elliott's infinitely more valuable. I feel like most mock drafts have Brown going 1 and then it's running backs after that. I would keep Zeke first. Zeke is a better fantasy player because of his higher value, and he's got a lot more, and he's only a second-year player. He's also cheaper just because Antonio Brown has up here for so long. So I give Ezekiel Elliott the edge in the debate of which player to nab. I get to keep them both, though. I'm going to do so. Most people in my league thought, oh, you know what? He'll just get dumped back into the pool. Next season, we'll all get to pick him, right? So this is a funny story. I mean, fantasy football stories go. This one's halfway decent. You know, it's the last couple weeks of the season last year, and there's several teams that are out of it. I was on the cusp of the playoffs, so I was playing hard to the very end. Plus, it's fun to play hard to the end. We actually have incentives in our league to play hard to the very end. But nonetheless, few teams, their seasons were over. They were stocking up rosters for next year. It's a keeper league. Smart decision. Makes sense. So somebody tossed Antonio Brown onto the waiver wire. They had him at a locked-in low keeper price of like $30. He's shooting up to 55. Too expensive. They dumped him. So I believe... How did I come about to figure this out? I was just sleuthing for players, and I saw him, and I didn't quite believe it was true. But, being opportunistic, I put in a waiver bid on him. I think like, not all my money, but a solid amount, like $20 or something. See if anyone would bid against me. I won Antonio Brown, and he joined my team for the final week of the year last year. I started him. He had a so-so week, but that's okay. I was out of the playoffs. Or whatever. I wasn't going to win the league, basically. He wasn't putting me over the top. I wasn't in the postseason at that point for the last final week. It was the week prior that I was still in it. So now I got Brown. But this is a big brouhaha in the whole league because Brown got dumped. And then not everyone knew. They weren't paying attention. They would never have expected it to happen. And then do we penalize this guy? Do we allow this to go forward? Do we take Antonio Brown and just automatically make him off limits, and then he goes into the draft next season? The decision was made. Let it move forward. I won him. He was dumped into the league. Now, he's expensive, but he's definitely going to be more expensive in the draft. This is an auction draft. People got money to spend, burning holes in their pocket. Now he's on my team. He's the number one player. He's a step below the couple of running backs, in my opinion. If we were doing a snake draft, I would go running back first if I was in that top position to do so. It's Le'Veon Bell, it's Johnson, Zeke. Where's the list of running backs? Sorry. Anyways, there's a couple of running backs at the top, like 3 or 4, that I would definitely take ahead of Antonio Brown, just because the value of the position is so much higher. So yeah, Johnson, Bell, Zeke. Oh yeah, they got LaShawn McCoy, Melvin Gordon on there, on Yahoo. That's where we play. I don't know. I like Brown over those two guys. There are a lot of other wide receiver options that are excellent. Running backs coveted. So I'm keeping Zeke on my team. I'm keeping Antonio Brown on my team. So now we got 4 keepers. I have Matt Ryan, Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams, and Sterling Shepard. Those are my guys I want to pick between. I find this particularly interesting. I know other people's teams, boring. These are a lot of star players. This is a stud mix up here, and it's one at every position. So it's kind of hard to pass up. Like, do you go in with a quarterback? Do you go in with a running back, a wide receiver, and like a tight end, a locked in? Kelce I'm keeping. He's too good and too cheap. So I got a final spot here for one more guy. And do I keep Matt Ryan, who had an incredible season last year, second best quarterback? Or do I keep Devontae Adams because he's very inexpensive, and I consider Matt Ryan a little bit higher priced? This is what I paid for him last year. I'll probably go more this year, so I'm basically I'm letting him go for a lesser Q quarterback. That being said, I take a peek into Matt Ryan's stats, and you won't be surprised to find out he's alternated seasons. Now, he's consistently gone better each season, but he's alternated. So, like, I should just pull him up. But he went basically like 4,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. Then he dropped down to 3,800 and 10. Then he'd shoot up to 42 and 17. So it would consistently go up, drop down. Go up a little higher than it was before, drop down. And then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so last year, obviously, he was up a lot. To the tune of, last year he had almost 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns. The year before, 4,521 touchdowns. That's 17 fewer touchdowns in 2015. 2014, he was higher at 28, but still 10 lower than last season, and closer to the same totals at 4,700 yards. So we go back in time. This kind of started for him 2010, so 7 years. That's a good sample size. 3,728 up to, so he's at a low point of 3,700 yards and 28 touchdowns. Next season, yards go up, touchdowns go up. Following season, yards go up, touchdowns go up. Then 2013, yards go down, touchdowns go down. Yards go up, touchdowns go up. Yards go down, touchdowns go down. Yards go up, touchdowns go up. So now he's alternating. So yeah, he was getting better and better and better as his sophomore, junior, senior years in the NFL, and then he's continued on from that point. And his high was last year, though. So 2012 was the beginning of the alternating period. 2011, and then he's reached a peak. He may get to 5,000 yards in a season, but it's not going to be next year. It's this year. It's going to be the year after in 2018. So the odds are Matt Ryan's going to drop in his numbers, and he's overvalued right now. Like, quarterbacks are so evenly packed that the difference between the first and the 10th is not that great. Therefore, why pay for the first or the second guy when they're not that far apart? Oh, this doesn't have stats on it. Oh, that's a shame. Let's see the stats. Because I want to see the quarterback stats from last year and how far apart they actually were. It's not that far. So Matt Ryan is not as high of a value player as Davante Adams for $1 because he's like going for 25 and he's a locked-in wide receiver. That would give me 2. So personally, I'm leaning towards keeping Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Brown, Travis Kelce, and Davante Adams. Now this is open. I am accepting trade offers. I may make a couple and see if anyone wants to bite on Ezekiel Elliott because he's a steal. And I do like finding secretly good running backs, but it's hard in the draft. I'd also trade Matt Ryan because I'm not keeping him. I'd trade him if you really love Matt Ryan. So let's take a peek at the quarterbacks because this is the most interesting part. Our league is basically a 2-quarterback league because you got the flex spot and you got to play quarterbacks the most points. Oh, this is not just quarterbacks. There we go. Now this is up for discussion. Obviously, the running backs, wide receiver is the top player discussion. But now we got quarterbacks because people love to draft quarterbacks. It's hard to not draft a quarterback, right? So last year, fantasy points. Aaron Rodgers was number 1. Yes. Matt Ryan was number 2. Drew Brees was 3rd with only 4 points behind him. And then it is actually a 30-point drop to Andrew Luck at 4. Kirk Cousins at 5 would be a 50-point difference. So it's significant. I will give you that. But what are the likelihood of Matt Ryan repeating those numbers this season versus, say, me grabbing Andrew Luck? I know they're not available. Well, someone may be back in the draft. We'll find out. Blake Bortles was the 7th-ranked quarterback last year. Now, no one really wants Blake Bortles on their team. He didn't have a particularly good season, but he was the 7th-ranked quarterback with 290 points on the year. He was ahead of Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, among others. Yeah, Blake Bortles. Therefore, I'm torn. Drew Brees had more yards. Aaron Rodgers had more touchdowns. But Drew Brees had 5,200 yards last year, 37 scores. He had a few fewer points than Matt Ryan because he had a lot more interceptions. 15 interceptions. Matt Ryan only threw 7 picks last year. Again, that was another anomaly in his stats. He's always thrown double-digit picks, and then last year down at 7. So I don't know. It's all about trust in fantasy football. Do you trust your player to have a repeat performance? Usually with quarterbacks you kind of can, but a career year out of a team that also overachieved. Yes, I really liked the Falcons last year, but they overachieved. This is a tough NFC. I don't know if they're going to get back to there this year. Their own division's pretty hard, at least it looks like it. I like Buccaneers. I like the Carolina Panthers as a potential bounce back team. And yeah, I guess I did promise to talk about another divisional breakdown this week. I'd done AFC East preview, I'd done NFC East preview, but I had to go to fantasy football because this is time people are starting to draft. I read the Draft Day Manifesto. If you guys don't read it, it's on ESPN. It's hilarious and awesome and great story about the Flintstones movie mixed in there, Matthew Berry. And that got me prepped, but you know when he releases it, it's fantasy football season, and it came out, I think, the end of last week. So it was time to talk fantasy, and I got Brown and Zeke on my team. It's a great debate. Quarterbacks, I was always on the side of I'd rather have the quarterback on the better team than the Blake Bortles who was on the Jaguars. However, Blake Bortles was pretty damn good last year. I may have to change my philosophy, and hence, in the spirit of such change, I am not going to move forward with Matt Ryan. I'm going to use lesser-named quarterbacks because I don't know if Ryan can repeat, and he's expensive, and I can keep another player that's better. That's the spirit of it. I'm keeping Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm going to give Matt Ryan back to the pack. So what's else up for debate this year in fantasy football? There are some very tempting rookies in the game. We will be getting to this on NFL Spin Zone soon. There are some tempting rookies out there. Beware the rookie quarterbacks. I don't really foresee any of them making a huge impact this season. I don't know if they'll be given the opportunity. It's hard to say whether they're even going to start yet. So nobody's announced that their rookie's starting. It's a tough player to draft. I may take a flyer, and if I was going to take a flyer, it'd be in Chicago with Mitch Trubisky. I think he'll have the chance to start the soonest, and I could see him having a little surprise success. He's ready for it. Deshaun Watson down in Houston, he's not going to be given the reins just yet. So I don't know. I would take a flyer on him in the draft as well, but don't count on him producing for your team until at least halfway point of the year, which you need room on your bench then. That's a bench spot, so don't overpay. It's basically my advice there. We'll touch on the other sports. Basketball, kind of in limbo. Not much to discuss, unless we want to talk about Chris Paul leaving the Clippers and Blake Griffin staying. But nah, it's the middle of summer. Basketball is on the back burner. The baseball playoffs is where it's heated up. Man, the Yankees made a splash at the deadline. They've kind of been up and down in the second half, but I'd be shocked if they don't continue on to make the playoffs. Circling back around to where we began in the NFL, but this time we're talking the actual teams on the field. My Jets lost Quincy Enunwa, IR for the year, neck injury. I was going to write a post on BuzzChomp last week about the New York Jets' best case scenario, I can't even get the words out of my mouth, for the season. And I kind of hit a writer's block, if you will, and then the Enunwa news came out, and now I'm going to have to write a New York Jets worst case scenario this week. I was going to get there, but I have to start with it because the actual season just feels too much worst case now for me to start with the best case scenario. So I will go with a dose of reality and our worst case scenario and talk New York Jets. Because with Enunwa on IR, he was real promising last year. He looked great, but he's missing the whole year, 6 to 9 months. And so this is a serious injury, and we need him to recover and take his time. So I wish him well, but he's out. Now, I like Robbie Anderson, but we haven't really seen him be able to take over a game yet. Granted, quarterback play, but quarterback play this year, McCown's reliable enough. Robbie Anderson's he was really skinny, so he was getting pushed around last season. But I like his potential. Sharon Peak also just didn't have the consistency. So both of those guys, got a good shot. I know we've brought in some other players. I'm still getting to know them. Whitehead, Douglas, a couple others. But this is a young and experienced Jets wide receiver core now. Who's going to step up and lead? I don't know. This will have to be in my best case scenario. I'm starting with worst case scenario, and now we don't have much wide receiver depth to speak of. And it's just not looking hot for the Jets this year. Say lovey. So I'm going to start with the worst case, and I'm going to move to the best case, because that was troubling. You never want to hear that you got an injured player in the offseason. A couple other major teams are dealing with that. The Falcons, Joe Flacco has a big back injury. The Ravens. I really liked the Ravens this year. Joe Flacco back injury. I don't know what to make of that. Miami Dolphins. Tannehill's going to be out for a little while. We don't know how long. They bring in Jay Cutler. I got to say, okay, I guess. I was never a big Jay Cutler fan. He did well, but he also turned the ball over a lot and made you slack your head at least once a game. Like, oh, what? At least once a game. That's tough. It's hard to root for as a fan, but overall he's decent. But he was retired. He was going to be a broadcaster. I guess I understand his itch to play, but from the Dolphins' standpoint, he'd kind of already decided that was it, right? Everyone's saying it, but I'm going to say it. I do think Colin Kaepernick is a good option at quarterback if you're desperate. I think he's a better option than Jay Cutler. He's actively in the league, or wants to be, whereas Cutler had retired and seemed to have wanted to. Now, maybe it was always in his back pocket he was going to come back. I guess he's still in shape. But Kaepernick is multidimensional as a player. I believe he could learn a new offense. I mean, he's been in the league for a while. He's had success. So, someone's going to sign him, right? Like, if legitimately nobody signs him before the start of the season, it's definitely collusion. It has to be. I mean, he is better than a lot of other teams' backups right now, and no one has signed him as their backup. It's just kind of ridiculous. Someone's going to have to take him, and I have no idea who he's going to be now. I really thought he was going to get signed by now. Crazy. And these teams losing their quarterbacks, that stinks. Jets lost one of their best playmakers on offense. It stinks. But we move forward, and we wish the best for our team, or possibly the worst if you're a Jets fan like me. This has been fun. I talked a lot of fantasy football. It got a little personal, but I got some great players to pick from. It's going to play out for some glory this year for me. Oh, yeah. We'll be back next week, talk more NFL. I'll preview a few more divisions. We'll have some preseason games under our belts. My Jets play this Saturday night. And I am live, Dan Salem, on Facebook at the Dan Salem, YouTube, the BuzzChomp channel, over on Twitter at the Dan Salem, live every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, all over the world because the internet is everywhere. All right, thank you guys. You've been great, and we'll talk next week. All right, peace.